tell them to tune in the Rainbow Push broadcast. Today we dedicate our broadcast to the life and service and memory of the Reverend Maceo Woods, one of the nation's great gospel preachers. We also dedicate this broadcast to one of our founding members, the Reverend Gary Masoni, who is being memorialized today. We thank the family for allowing him to serve this organization more than 50 plus years. We want you to join in and tune with us. Come with us. We're at the Parkway Ballroom, 4455 South King Drive in Chicago. Every week we're inviting teachers. Join us and be a part of the Teachers Division. Students, we want you to be a part of our Youth Division. Educators, higher education, we are pushing for an end to student loan debt. We're pushing for equity in public education. We're pushing for change. We need your voices. We need you. Today we celebrate women as they're marching all across the United States. The Women's March in Chicago will kick off at Grant Park and march to the Federal Plaza. They're focused on 3 or 4 issues. One is we're marching because we want to make sure that everybody's counted. Illinois lost people because of the undercount. We're marching because we want our children and everyone on our block, everyone in our family to be registered to vote. We're marching because we want to deal with this need for environmental justice. We're marching today for all of these issues and so many more. We're marching for access to affordable health care. We're marching for a livable wage. Join the Women's March today. If you're in Chicago, just meet us downtown at Grant Park, at Columbus Drive. If you're anywhere in the world, you can go to the Women's March and check where you are in whatever city you're in. Women are marching all across America. We're marching to change the course of this nation. We're marching to elect a new leadership in the Congress, the Senate, and even in the White House. God bless you. And now we will continue with our regular program. We have a special musical guest today that will be with us, Miss Cathy Townsend. She's an amazing voice, and so as we pay tribute to the memory, the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, our keynote speaker today will be none other than our national spokesperson, Mr. Jonathan Jackson. We will have Reverend Jackson come and give us a report and an update on our Pembroke initiative. We're going to talk about our Dr. Martin Luther King Scholarship Breakfast today. So much information. Stay tuned. We need you to become a part of this organization. And now I want you to greet warmly Miss Cathy Townsend.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. Troubles of the world. Troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. I'm going home to live with God. Soon I will be done with the troubles of this world. Trouble, trouble, trouble of this world. Trouble of this world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of this world. I'm going home to live with God. Weeping
thank Ms. Townsend for that powerful selection. And as we continue with our program, I want you to be aware of some Dr. King celebrations, commemorations that we're hosting across the nation. We will be in Detroit, Michigan on the evening of the anniversary of the holiday, which is Monday the 20th. We'll be in Detroit, Michigan. Let Freedom Ring. You can go to our website, rainbowpush.org, and get the detailed information for Let Freedom Ring. We'll be in Greenville, South Carolina this month as we continue to commemorate the legacy and memory of Dr. King, realizing that South Carolina is one of the states in play as we look at the upcoming presidential elections and the primaries. And then, of course, we have our breakfast celebration commemoration in Chicago on Monday, the 20th. There's still time to get 1 or 2 tickets and tables. We need you to support our scholarship breakfast because it's an opportunity for us in this climate of rising student loan debt to begin to assist young people. Reverend Jackson wants to make sure that every child that has the aptitude and has the attitude and has the achievement levels necessary to matriculate and graduate in 4 years has the support that they need. And so we are providing our Aura Lee Saunders scholarships, our Cyrilla McSween scholarships. We will open up the scholarship process on Monday, January 20th. You simply have to go to pushexcel.org and register for a scholarship application. Those applications will be reviewed by our scholarship committee, and people will be, the winners will be announced April the 15th. So from January 20th to April 15th, you must apply online. Go to pushexcel.org to apply. The breakfast is our opportunity, since we carry in many ways the legacy of Dr. King, inasmuch as our founder, our international president, worked directly with Dr. King. We are going to celebrate the legacy. It's not just a meal. We want to celebrate how Dr. King focused on excellence in education, and so we'll be lifting up our oratorical students. We will hear from and see and witness the hip ballet ballerinas as we talk about the performing arts. We will highlight young people who are engaged in STEM and who are doing amazing things with technology as we honor Dream, Hustle, Code. We will highlight how the journey of a young man who is now much older, who is singing an amazing voice that we hear often, and we will be honoring Roderick Dixon. And then for the first time, we will be giving the Reverend Jesse Jackson, Dr. Martin Luther King Legacy Award to Mr. George Johnson, the founder of Johnson Products Company. You'll be hearing more about that at the breakfast. Tickets are $150, tables are $1,500. We will also talk about our Pembroke project, our urban-rural initiative. Pembroke, just 70 miles from Chicago, the same mileage in terms of its size as the city of Chicago, where black farmers are growing everything we eat, raising all of the animals that we enjoy, steak and pork chops and ribs. They grow that just a few miles from here, and yet we don't recognize we are the market, they are the producers. So we'll be talking more about our Pembroke project. We'll be talking about our pretrial detainee initiative. We don't want people languishing in jails, behind prison bars, waiting for trial, not found guilty, and losing educational opportunities and economic opportunities. Our breakfast will focus on the hate crimes and what that means. And so our keynote speaker will be none other than Rabbi Sam Gordon. I can't tell you anymore. I can't tell you anything else. You just have to get a ticket or a table. $150 will be at the Hyatt Regency. You can go online, pushexcel.org, stop by Push today, purchase your ticket or your table, or make a contribution. And now, just to give you a glimpse of what our oratorical program, which is all over the country, is doing, we have a young man, Mr. Bradley Ross Jackson. He's in 8th grade at the Calvary Christian Academy. Powerful young orator. Give him a round of applause as he comes.
Greetings. My name is Bradley Ross Jackson, and I am going to recite excerpts from the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. This is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day that this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Oh, I have a dream today. With this faith, we'll be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, and to stand up for freedom together, know that we'll be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet lands of liberty. Of thee I sing, lands where my fathers died, lands of the pilgrim's pride. So let freedom ring. When we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring, from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, the Jews and Gentiles, the Protestants and Catholics will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty that we are free at last. I have the pleasure of welcoming my hero, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr.
Come on, let's give it up.
Somebody. I am somebody. Respect me, protect me, never neglect me. I am somebody. If my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, I know I can achieve it. Stop the violence, Save the children. Stop the violence. Save the children. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Somebody, believe it when I say I am somebody. You can kind of walk away, but at the end of this day say I am somebody.
SCLC staff meeting, the Ebenezer Baptist Church.
Our last staff meeting.
Listen, I want this movement to work.
Wait a minute, man.
And I want to cut down.
King's closest aides were unsure about the Poor People's Campaign. What could it accomplish? Could they mobilize a nationwide movement? Was King's nonviolence perceived as being too conservative?
And that's why I said the most radical guy lived in the 20th century was Martin Luther King Jr. It took a radical cat. Let me say my thing, and then I'll listen in up. I said the most radical cat lived in the 20th century was Martin Luther King Jr. It took a radical cat to put 50,000 black people in Alabama off buses.
The question, as I understood it, was not the fact that Dr. King didn't do anything. It wasn't the issue. The issue was, if we're going to take people on a go for broke, what are we going to be able to return back to Mississippi with in our hands?
Nothing.
What are we going to be able to return back to Chicago with in our hands?
Nothing.
And what Carlos, as I understood, was saying, I'd like you to state it, that if we're not, then let's just say we're not going to do that, and then he'll know. And if we are, say we are.
Can I speak to that, though? Because,
No.
This is not nonsense, okay? If the thing becomes the demands, and then you don't come back with the demands, you're in trouble.
I don't think we can give anybody any guarantees. Say that we've reached a point where we almost are where the Jews are when Hitler took power. That are you going to sit by and wait until you're put in a concentration camp, or you're going to organize and fight? Now, I don't know whether we're going to win or lose or draw or what we're going to bring back, but I'm not going to sit by and let the liberal wing or the progressive forces in the Negro community get chopped up. I'm going to fight. Some folks celebrate Abraham Lincoln, so we're going to celebrate Martin Luther King's Day today. Don't let him out of here. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Dr. King. Happy birthday to you.
We spent that one talking about how to fight to war on poverty. That was his agenda. At noontime, Zonona Clayton came in with a cake and said, "Doc, you was a bitch, you forgot your own birthday." And we laughed, we cut the cake and ate the punch for about an hour. Just a measured celebration.
We know how fond you are of our president, Lyndon Johnson. And we know how you're supporting everything. I've got this little cup for you, and I want this back because it's mine. And it says, let me read. It says, "We are cooperating with Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty. Drop coins and bills in the cup." And we
Martin Luther King was 39 years old.
Give our staff a big hand putting that together. Let me make, I was blessed to be with Dr. King his last birthday. Around 8 o'clock, he had breakfast at home with his family. Around 10, he came to the church, focusing on how to end poverty. In Chicago, there are 18,000 children in school who are homeless. Who are out of school and in school who are homeless in Chicago today. There are 9,000 inmates in Cook County Jail. A third of them don't want to come home. There's no home. They're staying in jail as a homeless shelter. Others are mentally challenged. Some want to get out and don't have the bail money. We're fighting to get them out. So we fight to free the captive, fight to end the war, and fight for poverty. That's Dr. King's agenda. So this is how he spent his last birthday, ending poverty at home, in the war abroad. Today we spend so much money on the military. We're prepared to kill the world, not prepared to heal the world. We're paying a big price for that. I want to thank our staff for putting this tape together. On the breakfast Monday morning, we're going to honor George Johnson. George Johnson, Johnson Products Company, first African American on the stock exchange, the first sponsor of Soul Train, Johnson Products Company. George Johnson hired 300 people making hair products, Afro Sheen. We honor that legacy. We honor him with a lifetime of Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, lifetime achievement award. Let's give for George Johnson a big hand. We honor the farmers from Pembroke. In some sense, Pembroke gives us an opportunity. 70 miles down the road is Pembroke, about the same distance as from Selma to Montgomery, 70 miles down the road. Pembroke is capable of feeding all of Chicago. I went to one farm alone last week. They grew 3,000 watermelons. They grew hogs and calves and cattle and vegetables. Chicago must be the market for Pembroke farmers. They make it, we consume it. They have organic farmers in Pembroke, Illinois. Difference is that all the farms around Pembroke have windmills, making money as subsidy. They said the wind stops at Pembroke. Doesn't make sense to me, but we will have windmills in Pembroke. Pembroke does not have natural gas. It has propane gas. They can't attract industry with propane gas. It's about $1,000 a month. You cannot heat up industry with propane gas. So we met with NICO and others. We intend to have natural gas lines in Pembroke and Wi-Fi and internet. We are going to bring Pembroke into this, and we're going to do it now. Put your hand together for Pembroke. We've been getting lots of calls this week about our book, Keeping Hope Alive. You may go to Amazon.com, and get Keeping Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Get the book as a part of your King celebration. We call you to action, but also to read this book and become more involved. We want teachers involved in a renewed way. And we want teachers to do 6 things with your class. Take your child to school, meet your child's teachers, exchange home numbers, turn the TV off 3 hours a night, and pick a report card every now and say, I will take my child to school. I will meet my child's teachers. I'll exchange home numbers. I'm going to turn the television off 3 hours a night. I'll pick up my child's report card. I'll take my child to church, temple, or synagogue once we put your hands together. So I want teachers reviving a strong teacher division, also a strong commercial division. In many ways, I ask people sometimes, see Congressman Jesse Jackson, give Jesse a hand. Thank you, Jesse. I ask people, who's the largest employer of blacks in Chicago? They say, well, it ain't Spiegel's no more. Who is it? I say, well, it's not supposed to. The largest employer of black folks in Chicago are black folks. It's the largest employer of black people in Chicago is black people. Large number of people get a second chance work for black businesses. You have the employees at our churches, our bars, our restaurants. We hire more black people than anybody else. So we must regain a sense of confidence in our ability to make a difference in the lives of our people. I want to say this in closing because I want to hear Jonathan today. We have a number of pictures we've taken across the years with Dr. King and others. One picture I missed, Dr. King came to our house during the Christmas season, and Jonathan was very quiet. We thought he was being mannerable. But Cyril McSween's wife, Gwen, said that boy he's cold sweat. We rushed down to the hospital and his left lung had collapsed. He was about to die. And they finally admitted him after some consternation. Dr. King came to visit Jonathan in the hospital at Billings, at Mitchell Hospital. And I didn't take the picture Dr. King, Jonathan Luther Jackson is Dr. King's godson. Put your hand together for Jonathan. You were watching us today around the nation. We have, I've been asked, what is the most significant thing we can do today? Register and vote. The difference between today and yesterday was we could only hope for change, now we can vote for change. We have the power to elect presidents. We have the power to unelect presidents and congressmen. And since we have the power, we can make brick with straw. We make democracy with votes. The result of our marching and fighting back, we now have the power to make a difference. So we fight for enforceable voter education. Those in jail who are not yet sentenced are eligible to register. We should register those young people who are in jail. In the South, the numbers are so big that the numbers in jail determine state elections. We intend to register them to vote while in the jail and as well as get them out of jail. All those who are registered to vote can serve on juries. We have work to do in registration. Affordable health care, affordable education. The four things stacked against our children today are, number one, when the stock market is rising, don't be confused about, say if I don't have any stock in the market, they ain't talking about me. So if they cut Pell Grants on the one hand, raise tuition on the other hand, and expand Parent Plus loans and cut food stamps 4 sides to a graveyard, we must fight to increase Pell Grants, reduce student loan debt, eliminate Parent Plus loans, and revive food stamps. When we fight back, we win. Amazing things come our way. Lastly, those who are watching us today on television, contact me at Rainbow Push today and send in a donation. 2020, send $20 or $200 or $2,000. We need your support today because we have a need to keep fighting back. That means staff members on the ground. Sister Cathy, get Cathy, say it again for just a second. Give her, Cathy, that. When Jonathan gets through there, I want you to sing change. When Jonathan gets through today. I'm especially delighted today to bring on national spokesman for the Rainbow Push Coalition, who has taken on additional responsibility in the organization. God has blessed him. When John was a child, John used to stutter. He couldn't talk for a long time. I must have the complex. John grew out of his complex. Became a force for good. His voice resonates around the world. He went to South Africa for us last year. He went to India for us last year. He went to South Africa. When John speaks, the world listens. My brother says, please accept and respect this man, Brother Jonathan Jackson.
Oh, I was born by the river in a little old tent. Oh, and just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. By the river, in a little tent, just like the river, y'all. yes it is. Listen, oh, it's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there, that's what he said. No. Beyond the skies. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh yes it will. Oh yes it will.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the Rainbow Push Forum on this King Holiday weekend. I'd like to give a very special thank you to my friend, the attorney Reverend Jeanette Wilson. Yesterday was her birthday, and she worked right through her birthday preparing for the King Holiday weekend. I see my friend here from DC, Brother McMorris, thank you so much. And from Pembroke, the good doctor, Dr. Alford, a man who is a champion, very much like that, the spirit of Dr. Howard. Our good friend Teddy Gilmore, Dr. Howard came up from Mississippi, had to be hidden in a casket, standing for civil rights. And when there were civil rights meetings to be had in Chicago, a medical doctor opened up his house to greet Reverend Martin Luther King and Mayor Richard Hatchett and so many others. I would like to speak with you today and welcome good to see my brother Jesse Jr. here as always, and my father just came in from Los Angeles today. I'll tell you the truth, I'm more excited about King Holiday than my own birthday. I feel like I get a bonus because my birthday is January 7th and Martin Luther King's is January 15th, so I celebrate all the way through, from one person to the other. But I think it's very important today that we talk about three things: the need to commemorate this day, the need to celebrate his life, and the need to accept and further the challenge that he laid before us. In the Harris polls of 1968, Reverend Martin Luther King was hated. He had a 75% disapproval rate, if you will, and you compare that to today, the person in the White House today is more popular than Reverend Martin Luther King when he died. What did Reverend Martin Luther King stand for? We must revisit, and we must share this with our children. I ask those of you that are watching and listening today, please gather your children. I need to fix this problem top down. Some solutions you can fix bottom up, and some things you have to fix top down. Some of you like to cook, and those of you that like to barbecue like I do, you understand one thing about a good piece of meat. Sometimes, no matter the preparation you make and the time that you put into it, if you've had a bad piece of meat, it's just not going to come out good. It's hard to come out right when you go in something wrong. Relationships and everything, correct? It's hard to understand Martin Luther King. If you approach him wrong, you can't get to understand him the right way. I remember when my first child was born. Follow me? And the first lie I told my child that I participated in that had my stomach turning upside down was about a Santa Claus. I was taking the children to Sunday school, and the popular world says, but there's Santa Claus and the Christmas tradition of jolly old St. Nicholas. And I said, but I'm lying to my child. How am I expected to teach my child something about faith? And then I make a mockery out of it with a jolly old heavy-set, portly man that comes from the North Pole with some elves and goes through chimneys all around the neighborhood, even when people live in apartment buildings with no chimneys. You put your child in a state of cognitive dissonance where the child is trying to reconcile fact from fiction because we've introduced lies into the curriculum. How can it be that this child that was born in a stable and placed in the manger, in the trough where the horses eat so he wouldn't fall out, who the king wanted to kill, that had to send people that were spiritually bound from the east, that followed their soul, their instincts, to bring gifts of frankincense and myrrh and gold so the child could escape, so he would not be killed? How did a child born under a death warrant end up being made about toys and gifts and not helping the homeless and the families of the immigrants, the migrants, and those that are left in the margins? A teenage mother with an unemployed father miraculously has a child. Then you look up at Easter time. We go back to tell our children that the child that became a man that we acknowledge as the Son of God is now equated to jelly beans, Easter eggs, and a Snow White bunny running through your yard. It's a bit much. Well, as it relates to the Reverend Martin Luther King Day, I'm beginning to see the same thing happen over again in my lifetime. A man that did not have bodyguards, did not have security guards, did not work for the city, the county, or the state, did not have any of the tools of government. What did he do? He believed in that Bible. The same Bible that some people had misconstrued and used for bad. He saw the good in that Bible. He saw liberation as a theology. He saw nonviolence as a tactic. He saw love as a weapon that we could use to liberate ourselves from a slave-bidden, slave-born society. Those that have lived and worked with the Reverend Martin Luther King, John Conyers, who recently passed, Mayor Richard Gordon Hatchard, who recently passed, my father, who's standing strong. Those persons that lived and worked with him, they had a commonality. They never stopped fighting. Now I see the misappropriation, the counterfeiting of the Reverend Martin Luther King holiday. Let me pick it apart just for a moment so I can recreate it so you'll understand. When you call him Dr. Martin Luther King, that's a problem. Although affectionate, doctor is for a dissertation. It's a terminal degree, the highest you can get in academia. But there is a title, a salutation greater than doctor. That's when you're called the Reverend. When the judge comes in, you stand up in the courtroom. When you go to church and the Reverend starts to preach and you open the Bible, you are asking for a call, vocal, vocational, calling from God to help illuminate and open up these words. He is the Reverend Martin Luther King. Once you were a senator, were a governor, and you end up as the president, your highest salutation is president. Once you were a cardinal and you end up as the pope, your highest salutation is the pope. When you become the reverend, that is the highest salutation than the doctor. So by not saying Reverend Martin Luther King, by having a reverend on the mall in Washington, D.C., without one reference, one quote that he's made acknowledging God is a problem. Why? Because they never wanted to see our humanity. They never wanted to see us in a noble light. He gave our race, he gave our culture, he gave our history dignity. Part of what you see that goes on every day on TV is there's 1,000 ways to take away our dignity and our respect. That is calculated. They all want to see us entertaining. They all want to see us smiling. They always want to see us shucking. They always want to see us jovial. They always want to see us non-cerebral and serious. What did the Reverend Martin Luther King do? He found a tactic and a tool that we could use to break this slaveocracy. Here is a man whose father, Daddy King, was born in Stockbridge, Georgia, who at 14 years of age and needed glasses and couldn't quite read, was trying to get a job on the train stop. so he could make some money and come back and give his family something. Daddy King had a bit of a temper when he saw the man that his father had to deliver the cotton to take his father's money, and Daddy King would say, "But Daddy, what about the seed money from the cotton?" And the white man told him, "Shut up." He says, "But Daddy, he's got your seed money. There's a profit in there." His family had come from the lineage of those that have been sharecropping, overworked, underpaid, and systematically robbed. Why do we come to commemorate the Reverend Martin Luther King today? Because our children will be confused. He's an extraordinary man, yet an ordinary man. A man who went to school, who had some juvenile challenges with his own mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters. A man that went to college at 15. A man who laughed and joked and lived and breathed. Why am I telling you this? Because I don't want you to put Reverend Martin Luther King on a pedestal above being a human being. Because if you do, then you use that as an excuse for you not to do anything yourself. He made a conscious choice to fight for justice. He could have given great sermons, masterful orator, master as a reverend, but he saw that the liberation was in the gospel was a tool. He didn't want to leave us with fanciful, beautiful stories of 2,000 years ago. He wanted us to believe that the Bible has a living word, not a dead word. I don't want to look up and talk about Bible stories and fairyland from 2,000 years ago. I want to use the instructions and the words there to help me today so I can get to tomorrow. You can get into a slave mentality of reading and looking back and saying all power is out of my hand. He understood our Constitution, the law, and he understood a law greater than man's law, and that's God's law. Because everything that's legal is not moral. Legality is the lowest end. Morality is higher. You should stop before you get to a certain point, not when you get caught by the law. Instead of thou shalt not kill, when you've got your moral compass on, you should say, thou shalt not argue with a fool. So long before you wanted to kill somebody, you should have walked away and said, that's a fool, and let them be wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, why do we come to commemorate the Reverend Martin Luther King? This was the idea, the brainchild of the great late Representative John Conyers, who worked with Reverend Martin Luther King. And when Martin Luther King died, Mr. Conyers, a thinker who signed more progressive legislation than anyone in American history, 50 years an honorable man. I'm not going to let you knock his reputation. I'm not going to let you talk about he had a stain on his character. He was unblemished. He was a soldier. He was a fighter. He was a veteran. He was a legislator and an honorable and dignified man. I know some of our young people don't know about Toys R Us anymore. Walmart sells more toys than Toys R Us. But a friend of mine, Eddie Reed, called me yesterday and he says, you know, some of these people are like action Toys R Us figures. I said, what is that? He says every time they create a Marvel character or one of these cartoon characters, Toys R Us used to come back out with a character of a G.I. Joe, of a toy that we could play with and embrace. Some people in the activist community today are just G.I. Joe action-packed figures. They come up for a season. But the people that loved and worked with the Reverend Martin Luther King, they fought all of their lives and never stopped. Why do we come to commemorate Reverend Martin Luther King? Because he liberated us all. What was the solution to being a minority in a majority country that was born out of slavery, that was attacking and unprosecuting lynchings, that was buying and selling children, a society that did not regard us as human beings for 246 years. You could not marry, have a name. You could not out-weaponize them. He found in the work of Dr. Mahatma Gandhi, soul force, the satyagraha, the soul force that you needed to have resolution. Mr. Mahatma Gandhi was inspired by Henry David Thoreau in his treatise on civil disobedience. Civil rights and our civil disobedience comes out of not participating in something evil. So what happened in Montgomery was a restraint of trade. When we were boycotted, Reverend Martin Luther King says, let us not participate in something evil. Let us restrain our trade and not be subjected to humiliation. We have to tell our story, ladies and gentlemen. I look at the news every day and I'm heartbroken like you when I see the crimes. Our children simply don't know where we've come from, what we've been through. We're not weak, we're survivors. We're not victims, we're survivors. We've made it over the toughest periods, and we're gonna make it through the times of today. Why do we come to commemorate? Because no African American had ever been considered worthy of a national holiday. John Conyers specifically wanted to give the meritorious salutation and honor the greatest thing a nation can do. To honor someone is to give them a national holiday. That was strategic. That was not coincidental. That was not accidental. That was very deliberate. And there are only two federal recognized days in the name of an individual where the markets are closed: Columbus Day and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He proposed that legislation 4 days after Reverend Martin Luther King was dead, after he was killed, assassinated. And it went on until 1983 when President Reagan signed the legislation for it to be enacted to have a federal holiday in 1986. But guess what? The markets did not recognize it. After Jimmy Carter tried to have the federal vote brought before the Congress in '79, it was denied. Then there's a young man, Stephen Morris. You know him affectionately as Stevie Wonder. When the soul and the science and the movement came together, he rewrote that horrible song, Happy Birthday to You, to say, happy birthday. He put some soul in it that ignited our passion and our soul. He brought us all together. Then it officially went into the being in 1986. 17 states had already enacted the King holiday legislation. But we were confused. Should we work? Should we not work? Should we go to school, not go to school? The markets were open. It wasn't until 1998 when I was with my father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, a friend of the great John Conyers. He says something is wrong on why people can't take a day off. And I said, Dad, the markets are open. That's the reason the banks are open. I said, I don't know why that is. We went to see Chairman Dick Grosso of the New York Stock Exchange. He went to see Sanford Weill, the world's largest banker at that time, and he asked them in 111 Wall Street, why is the market open on the day of Reverend Martin Luther King's birthday? And Chairman Dick Grosso said, I don't know, we've never thought about it. He says, this is a private member organization. Let me get back to you on that. I've got to poll the membership. Within 24 hours, Chairman Dick Grosso came back up and told my father, Reverend Jesse Jackson, the New York Stock Exchange unanimously voted to close the markets. That is why a black man's name is closing the markets on King Holiday. Private sector. The New York Stock Exchange has $30 trillion worth of value in stocks. The New York Stock Exchange does over $170 billion in value every day. This is why the market is closed on King Holiday. What I don't want you to be confused on is on the misappropriation, like Easter, like Christmas on the King Holiday. Those that are in office now want us to have a day of service. They tell you to clean up bathrooms, go help a neighbor, go get some garbage and all that. Let me tell you, you should do that every day without a King Holiday. But if you want to honor the Reverend Martin Luther King, make yourself re-energized, refocused. Make this a renewal point, a time for you to commemorate, to come back and say, what am I going to give of my life? Not what am I going to give of my hour? What am I going to give of my day? What are you going to give of your life? We celebrate a man who was criticized and killed. We celebrate a man that went to jail 29 times to make America better. We celebrate a man who was a minister. He is the only non-elected official, the only non-general, non-politician. He is the only minister to have a mall erected in Washington, D.C. Why is Rainbow Push set up on Saturday morning? We have the form and the features and the feel of a church, but it's about carrying on Reverend Martin Luther King's message and his life work. Why are we focused on Pembroke, Illinois? Because Reverend Martin Luther King was focused on anti-war, anti-violence, and he was focused on a war on poverty, not a war on the poor. Pembroke has been robbed. Many of those that have the heirs of state and black farmers, they've been robbed. We have to stay focused on the life and the working of the poor. Poor not meaning you don't work. Poor means you don't have enough income to cover all of your bills. Poor means you cannot accumulate any assets. Poor means you're being overcharged at a currency exchange. Poor means you're getting overdraft fees from the bank. Poor means you never get satisfied with credit approval. Poor means you pay more interest rates than anyone else. Poor means your insurance rates are higher than anyone else. Poor means your house is probably teetering on foreclosure because you can't get refinanced. Poor means they're checking in on your credit score and denying you a job. Poor means you can't get out of bail for a nonviolent offender. Now, you know, like I know, many more people have been arrested, locked up, jailed for circumstantial evidence. The law is thrown at black folks. And lo and behold, what do we see in Washington, D.C. today? They play with guidelines, rules. They just throw the law at us, bam, all guilty. First you're guilty, and then you got to fight to prove you're innocent. How many times you look up every week and see another person getting out of jail after 20 years? What took so long? The assumption was they were guilty. If they weren't guilty, well, they were going to be guilty. If they weren't going to be guilty, they did something we don't know about, and that's the way it is. That's wrong. If King were alive, he would talk about the strikes going on in Mississippi today at the jail, where the people are being degraded and left for dead, and prisoners are killing each other, and the state is turned the other way. If King were alive today, he would talk about voter suppression. He died making sure that we had the right to vote. He would talk about the public housing crisis that we're facing and the elder care that our society is challenged to. So if you go to a King event and you do not leave out of there uncomfortable, you probably went to the wrong event. King wanted to make sure that he challenged challenged our faith, challenged us to go into action. Something about comforting the disturbed and disturbing those that are too comfortable. 140 million people are now living and working in poverty in the United States. The New York Stock Exchange is making record highs, but the people are in record lows. They said unemployment is down. Sure, it can be down, but when the living wage is so low, you cannot afford to work your way out of poverty. You have masqueraded and hidden the true measure and the index of poverty. Oh, it's time for us to open our blinds, open our eyes, open our hearts. In closing, when I tell you I'm so pleased on the King holiday, a time that we need to make sure our children set aside, not their birthday. What's my birthday about? What have I done? What's your birthday about? I hope it means more. But I want my life to have meaning. And when I see a life that has meaning, I want to take the time to be able to set aside a holy place. Our children can't see anything bigger than themselves. That's a problem. Reverend Martin Luther King did not start the civil rights era. He participated in another civil rights era in the 60s. There was one before that in the 20s. There was one before that in the 1860s. This is a constant battle. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you in the challenge, have you ever voted? Have you ever voted? Have you ever missed a vote? Have you ever encouraged someone to vote? Have you ever picked someone up and driven them to the polls on voting day? Have you ever called off on King Day and told your boss, told your employers, I've got something that I honor, that I respect. I cannot come in tomorrow on Monday or on that day? Have you ever sacrificed and said, I'm not going to spend any money on this King Day. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to hold these dollars that are itching to get out of my pocket. I'm going to hold back on this debit card that may bounce because I'm going to delay this purchase. I'm going to join a civil rights organization. I'm going to take my child to a King event. I'm going to have my child committed to social justice. And you can be successful. I don't want your child to come around, and there's so many brilliant children and so many families doing the right things, but our children don't know how to fight. My father's generation, they didn't complain, they fought back. People want to come up to my father, give him a resume. I want you to see this. Can you make a private call? And all that he asks is that we come together for a collective action. This isn't about you, this is about us. King wanted us to move beyond sanctimonious trivialities and religious irrelevancies. Can you believe the Lord that we praise, God, Jesus, he never heard the word Christian? He was a Jewish child, right? And when he died, the scriptures go on to say. Can you believe he never heard of the AMEs? Can you believe he never heard of the CMEs and the Baptists and the culture? Can you believe he's never heard of all these things that we have put together in place of his name? He wanted us to be combined for universal love. And I want you to know that I am so proud of my father for having never dropped the banner that he picked up from the Reverend Martin Luther King. It's hard to get some of us to come out for an hour a week in the name of the Reverend Martin Luther King. It's very difficult to have us buy a membership to any civil rights organization. Not your society, and I encourage you to do that with your sorority and your fraternity and your other organizations. But what have you committed to civil rights? When the Trayvon Martins get killed and you know we're upset and we ought to say something, who's to say it if we haven't invested in the vehicle for our own liberation? Why are we upset when the 257 News, the networks don't cover us? Who wants to see us free? Martin Luther King is my hero. My father, my hero. Let us stop exalting the dead and burying the living in the name and the respect of the Reverend Martin Luther King. Join a cause, participate, contribute, give of your time, talent, and your treasure, and we can make a difference. Sister Cathy Townsend, Big Anthony Jackson, Jonathan, everything must change.
Everything must change. Nothing stays the same. Everything must change. Nothing stays the same. The young becomes the old. Mystery That's the way of time. Nothing and no one goes unchanged. There have not many things in life you can be sure. And that's rain comes from the clouds, sun lights up the sky, hummingbirds do fly. Sun comes from the clouds, sun lights up the clouds, hummingbirds, they do fly. Everything must change. Nothing stays the same. No. Ow. Everything must change. Nothing and no one stays the same. You see the young, they become the old. Mysteries do unfold. That's the way of time. Nothing and no one goes unchanged. There have been many things in your life you can be sure of. And that's the rain comes from the sky, sun lights up the sky, hummingbirds, they do fly. Everything must change.
This is here, Sister Cathy Townsend. Give it up, Cathy Townsend. Those tremendous talent we have in our community. I want to do a couple of things now before we go into further. First of all, are there any educators, teachers are here? And teachers are here today, teachers. You were last week. If you're a connected parent, you'll be part of the parent educator division, parents educator staff. We're trying to get 100 teachers who will get their children in their class to take the 6-point pledge. You never know when some child's life you'll touch will make a difference. If you have a business, raise your hand. In business. You meet with Brother David Day. When the meeting's over, David to our right. David Day. Many of our businesses need capital. Some need market. Some need to be saved from an arbitrary justice. Some of the brother yesterday, Lamel, who his company made the top in his tier last year in Detroit. Just had to take his market, just arbitrary, just change their mind. We were victims of arbitrary justice. That's why we need an organization. So we must fight back together. Everybody needs somebody, sometime. Help push. Before you need help from push. Put your hand together if that makes sense to you. If you would give I've asked some of you to give $1,000 in our drive for our reconstruction of our headquarters on 50th and Drexel. If you want to do it, you can do it. If you'll give it at least $100, please stand. At least $100, please stand. Jeanette. Come forward. At least $100, please stand. Bishop Jones, we thank you so much, Bishop. Brother Lamel McMorris, with his mother patting him on the head. Your sacrifice. We need your support today. Monday morning will be our King celebration at the Hyatt. 7:30 a.m. we're going to honor the Pembroke farmers. We'll honor George Johnson. We're going to honor children on Monday morning. Be there at 7 a.m. King holiday. We'll honor John, in the future we'll honor John Conyers, who made it possible. What's his name? Reverend DeVille. Reverend DeVille, give Reverend DeVille the hand. Lamel McMorris, thank you, Lamel. Give Lamel a big hand. Cathy, I want to see you before you go. One day we've done, we identify all this hidden talent. Don't enough folks know about you, Cathy. You give at least $50 stand. At least $50. At least $50. Thank you, Phil. Go, Phil. Go, Phil. Go, Phil. You give at least $50, whoever you are. Do give something. If you've not gotten your book yet, the book's on sale in the back. If you don't have your book yet, raise your hand. Thank you very much. Books $25. Thank you very much. Jesse Jackson Jr. Preacher Jesse Jackson Jr. We need you on the firing line. Jesse Jr. We need your voice on the firing line. Put some pressure on him. If you're not yet contributed, raise your hand. You're not contributing. I like that.
But I'm still here. Thank you, Jesus. Troubles, I've seen my share of troubles, but I'm still here.